Hello, everyone. It's Friday, Erev Shabbos, Parshat Matos-Masei. The video Dvar Torah this week is sponsored by Yechi Reuven as a merit for Hasaras Magefa Zu Me'aleinu, that Hashem should remove the pandemic from us and from the entire world. As many of you, if not most, probably know, we sent out an email. Unfortunately, I can't be in Shul this Shabbos or next Shabbos due to an exposure to someone who tested positive for COVID-19, although I have no symptoms. I never suffered any symptoms, and I was tested negative, Baruch Hashem, thankfully, for COVID-19. But I still have to be in a self-quarantine through next Monday, and so I will not see any of you in person this Shabbos, or unfortunately even next Shabbos, and any time in between. But thankfully, the most important thing is to thank Hashem that that I and Ariel and our entire family are doing well. So thinking about this, about being stuck here at home, I was drawn to the part of the Parsha that discusses the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge. Someone who kills unintentionally, chas v'shalom, must flee and stay in the city of refuge and is stuck there and is not allowed to leave. And so I'd like to just reflect on this part of the Parsha and highlight three lessons to learn from the Parsha that are applicable to all of us, to my experience right now. The first question is, why does this appear in this week's Parsha? The law of the murderer, of the unintentional murderer, the concept of a city of refuge does already appear in the Torah and appears elsewhere. Why is it here? So there are two reasons. One is, at the end of the book of Bamidbar, the Jews are getting ready to enter the land of Israel. And these last prakim of the book of Bamidbar are discussing the land, the boundaries of the land, the apportionment of the land. And thus, it includes in that discussion the concept of the cities of refuge, that there will be these special cities, and how they fit into the mapping of the entire land. But in addition, this section of our Parsha concludes saying that these laws must be followed. If someone killed intentionally, he must be judged by the court. He cannot buy his freedom. Even someone who killed unintentionally cannot buy his freedom from the Ir Miklat. And the Torah says, V'lo tachanifu et ha'aretz, do not bring guilt upon the land. Ki adam hu yachanif et ha'aretz, because blood that is spilled, again, brings guilt upon the land. If it was a murder intentionally, the blood cannot be atoned unless the appropriate punishment is meted out. Do not defile the land in which you live, that I dwell in. For I am your Lord who dwells amongst Israel, especially in the land of Israel. That if there is a loss of life, if there's a murder intentionally, even more so, but even when there's an unintentional killing, apparently there's some spiritual connection to the land, and the land is defiled, and there must be atonement created, either through a ruling of the court or through the exile of the unintentional murderer. This is something that is uniquely found connected to the sin of murder or even to the accidental killing of a person. And the reason for this is, part of the reason is that a human life is the holiest thing in the world. Every human being created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. If that is snuffed out, if that is destroyed, that creates such a negative spiritual force that one, as the Torah describes it, it defiles the land, it affects the entire surroundings around it, and there must be some spiritual response. That is part of the reason why, even if it was totally by mistake, totally unintentional, the Torah creates this entire system of halachos, of the Ir Miklat, of fleeing to the city of refuge, because there must be some atonement, there must be some spiritual response to react to this incredible loss, the destruction of a human life. And that is one lesson that we learn from the Parsha, the incredible preciousness, holiness, importance of a human life, and the incredible devastation when there is the loss of a human life. We also learn from this entire part of the Torah that we are held responsible not only when we do something intentionally, but even when we make a mistake. If it is totally out of our control, the halacha says, then there is no responsibility. But if something happens because we were not as careful as we should have been, that is the situation of the unintentional murderer. If we are not as careful as we should have been, and by mistake we do something or cause something, so we do bear some amount of responsibility. That is why the unintentional murderer must flee to the city of refuge. So the second lesson to derive from the Parsha is that, especially when we're dealing with matters of life and death, so we have to be careful. And it's not enough to say that we weren't meaning to hurt someone, but we have to uphold the standards that are considered the responsible behavior given the circumstances, given the pandemic in which we are living. And so my situation, my personal experience right now is certainly reminding me to, again, not make the mistake that everything is fine, that the virus is gone, that there's no more danger. So again, as is appropriately laid out for us by the state of Massachusetts, by doctors, scientists, we all still have to be responsible and careful. And we do not want to be responsible for being too lax and not following the suggestions and guidelines that we are meant to be following. And finally, the third lesson to draw from the Parsha, the Torah says that the unintentional murderer stays in the city of refuge ad mos hakohen, until the Kohen, which we understand to mean the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, passes away. Why is his stay, his punishment to stay in the city of refuge, connected to the high priest and his passing? So many commentators explain as follows. The Talmud says that the high priest bears some responsibility for this unintentional killing. How so? The high priest was meant to be someone that was such a righteous person, so holy. He was in the Beis Hamikdash. He entered the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, and he was meant to pray for the entire Jewish people. And he was meant to pray for their protection. He was meant to pray that we do not make such mistakes, such errors that would lead to the loss of life. And apparently for the Kohen Gadol on his level, if there would be such an accident, that meant that he did not pray as passionately, as forcefully, as intently as he should have. Or perhaps he was not on the spiritual level that he should have to be able to provide that spiritual protection. And so we learn from this that every person on their level has the power to pray, to protect themselves, to protect others. Not every prayer is answered, of course, and we're not all on the level of Aaron HaKohen or the Kohen Gadol, but prayer is efficacious. Prayer can protect, and prayer can also harm, alluding to other teachings connected to this part of the Parsha. And so, with our commitment to be careful and to be responsible in the context of the pandemic, we do also need prayers. We need to pray for ourselves, for our families, for our health, for our safety, for our parnasa, financially, materially. And we should be praying. We should be praying for the scientists, for doctors who are caring for those who are ill, for those who are working on vaccines or treatments. We need it. The whole world needs it. And they need to be working so hard. And they are, the scientists and doctors. And we can help them. We each have some power of prayer. And all of our powers together is even more powerful. We can pray, and we can make a difference through our tefillos. We should not think otherwise. It's the foundation of Judaism. There is a power to prayer. And so that is the third lesson to learn from, that we can learn from this part of the Parsha. All three lessons: the value of human life, how holy it is, and thus how devastating it is when there's a loss of life, that we all are obligated to be responsible, to be careful, to not even cause inadvertent harm, and finally combined with our practical actions and protections and being responsible, to pray for ourselves and for the entire world. And with all of that combined, Hashem should have mercy on us, and we should make it through okay, and everyone should be blessed with health and with safety. and everyone should have a good Shabbos. And I look forward to seeing everyone as soon as possible in person. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.